Hello everyone, I'm Veena,
Hello, I'm John.
and today we are going to share with you about the concerns and misconceptions about studying in Germany. Okay, so John, we know that you have studied and lived in Germany. Through our chats with parents and students, very often there are these top concerns, like top 3, top 4, top 5 concerns that they would share with us about how hard is learning the language, whether or not it's really affordable. We know it's tuition free, but when it comes to cost of living and all of that, when you add all of those up, is it actually that affordable? And of course, with safety, it's Europe. So people often feel like, it might not be as safe as back at home in Malaysia. So yes, let's start with the first thing, right? Is German language a difficult language to learn?
That's a very fun question, right? The thing about learning new language or when learning anything new at all, we often struggle because it's new. We are not used to it. And German, being a language that has a very different grammatical structure compared to English or Chinese or even BM, will put us in a very uncomfortable situation. I would say, depends on how you see it. There are advantages for Malaysian students to learn German. And one of the reasons is because the pronunciation is the same as Malay. So if you can speak Malay, you can pronounce German words correctly. Now, what would be difficult is to memorize the words. But I think, to be fair, that's the same for whatever language you're learning, right? Even if you're learning English or Malay and you're new to it, you will need to memorize the words initially at the beginning. Yeah. I did manage to learn German. I, until today, didn't manage to learn Mandarin. Definitely a difficult thing to do, learning something new. But it's possible. We have students that do very well. We have students that are so much more fluent compared to myself even. And it really depends on the effort you put in and of course how open you are to being receptive to what the teachers are teaching you, right? So if let's say the teacher is giving you some feedback and you choose not to be receptive to it, that might actually hinder your progress in learning the language as well.
So we know that learning German is similar to English. Like we know about IELTS, and IELTS, there are the 4 components: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. It's the same for German language as well, right? We hear a lot about how hard grammar is. Is that something that you find, like when you were learning the language, was it something that you struggled with as well? Because you spoke about memorizing. So is it particularly in grammar, or is it just overall? It's important to memorize the rules, and it's applicable when you speak, when you're listening, when you're writing.
I think the thing about German is that they do follow a lot of rules, right? And the language is no exception to it. Now, the good thing is, if you are able to memorize all the rules, you will be very good at the language because you are very clear when to apply, the tense, when to use the right words and so on. And people won't be confused with what you say. I think that's actually the good thing about the German language because it's pretty clear once you get a hang of it. But probably one of the difficult things is to get a hang of it, right? So when you're new to it, you'll be like, why there's so much for me to learn? Why must I memorize forms of word for different tenses?
But Mr. John, my daughter is not good at memorizing. She is better at understanding things and then, applying it to her exams and all that. So what would you say to that?
I say one of the important tip for learning a language, not just German, but any language, is immersion in the language. And what I mean is that you need to be open to speak and make mistakes, and that's how you actually learn. The more you practice, the better you get at something. Don't be afraid, just do the best of your ability at that moment. So if you are only at beginner's level, you have very few words that you know, and you can only speak in, like, for example, in simple tense. Use what you know and try to mix in maybe English or try your best to find another way to explain what you want to say, and that works actually. The other one is really about spending time to listen to music, watching YouTube videos, listening to how people would say it, how they construct their sentences, what kind of words they will use. And again, maybe not memorize words by word all the time, but memorizing sentences will even help, right? Some people struggle with memorizing. I really do think that once you practice enough, the language will come. It was the same for me as well. When I first started learning German, it was very tough. But I think at some point, you will realize you will struggle and struggle and struggle, and don't know why. The next day, you start thinking in German, And then one day you start dreaming in German, and then when you know that, you got the hang of this.
I suppose there are a lot of fun ways to learn a language, and it's not necessarily like, whatever you see in textbooks, and then you are supposed to remember everything and try to make sense of everything. There's also a lot of fun ways, like you said, watching videos and watching movies and listening to music. And I think that's just something that people tend to complicate when you think about learning a foreign language. So how do you simplify it at the end of the day is what is important. So let's talk about money. So everyone's very interested to know when it comes to it's free to study in Germany, but is it really free? So we know that you can study a degree for free, but I've got to invest in learning the language. I've got to still allocate a sum for my cost of living. Is it really affordable at the end of the day, or does it still come up to a sum?
I think one thing I would like to point out, like we have received questions from people, is this too good to be true? Is it really tuition free? You must be lying. Many of the universities do offer tuition-free education even to international students, and that means Malaysian students can enjoy tuition-free education. What's the cost of living like in Germany? Unfortunately, it has been getting a little bit more expensive over the years. When we first started helping students study in Germany 7 years ago, it was a lot more affordable then. But now I would say you probably need about 5,000 ringgit, more or less, to fully cover your living expenses. Per month, 5,000 ringgit per month. Now that might seem quite a lot, but do remember your cost of living is all you need when you are studying in Germany because you don't pay tuition, right? And you can really work it out. If you compare about some of the tuition fees that we need to pay, even in Malaysia, it will be more than what you will need to pay just to cover your living expenses in Germany. So it is not very cheap, but if you are to study even locally, you could be paying even more.
The amount that people need to allocate when they think about the total sum of how much a 3.5 years degree program is going to cost you, it would seem like it is a lot. But sometimes they forget that if they are paying tuition fees over here in Malaysia to a foreign branch university, it would amount to the same, isn't it? So I think it is important for people to sort of like do their homework and make a comparison to see how much it would come up to, and that is when you will see that it amounts to either about the same or slightly lower to study in Germany, right?
I would like to add on to that. I think usually, based on what I've shared so far, maybe then you will start calculating, I will need 5,000 ringgit a month to cover my living expenses to study in Germany. So that is about 60,000 ringgit a year. And for 3 years, it's about 180,000 ringgit. If we fully look at the cost structure, for example, while I was studying in Germany, I will need to do a semester of internship. And I'm actually paid enough to cover my living expenses during the 6 months. So we are talking about 6 months less, just by me following the course itself. And as students, we are also allowed to work. And the minimum wages for part-time students is actually pretty good at 12 euros an hour. So as parents, if you are really tight, your child can actually help you, right? And help you save a little bit by working part-time. And there will be enough time to work. Like for example, if during the semester, you would like to focus on your studies, you don't need to work part-time. But in summer holidays, let's say you have 2 months off, you can actually work for a month, right? And whatever you earn for a month, you try to space it out for the rest of the year.
Let's talk about the advantages of working part-time, right? Like, you would improve your German language. That's one. Are there common part-time jobs?
Yeah, so definitely, because when you are working part-time, you will likely be speaking to other Germans or other Europeans, and you'll be forced to speak in German. Therefore, your German will improve. That is one advantage. The second advantage is that you get to work part-time in whatever you are studying. So for example, if you are studying engineering, you get to work at an engineering company. And that means that you get to put into practice what you are learning, you get to earn allowance, and you get to practice German at the same time, right? So nothing is wasted.
The difference between part-time jobs and internships, do they both get paid?
So I think there are actually, I would say, three different categories, right? So there's part-time job, and that is actually something you do voluntarily in addition to your studies. Then there is the internship, and that is actually part of your studies. So you will need to actually do it, and luckily the good thing is you get paid for it as well. And then the third one that we didn't mention earlier is pre-internship. And pre-internship is a requirement to study the course at the university. Now, that being a requirement, you might not necessarily be paid, but otherwise, the other two, internship and part-time job, they are both paid, so you get an allowance for that.
Pre-internship is not necessarily mandatory for all courses.
It's not mandatory for all courses, yeah. So it depends on whether your course requires you to have pre-internship, but I would say it really depends on what you want to study, and some courses don't require that, and some courses will require that.
I just want to say, based on the students that we have assisted to study in Germany, right, there are really some interesting internship opportunities that we hear from them, and it's a combination of voluntary internships as well as those that are tied to their degree programs.
I think one of the exciting thing about studying in Germany is you actually also get to intern at companies that many Malaysians already know. For example, I interned at Bosch. Like in Malaysia, we know that as the company that sells spark plugs, but the project that I did with them is something actually very interesting, where we were developing a system of robots that can navigate a building and plot it in 3D, what's the application for that? So for example, you bought an abandoned building, multi-story, and it can be very dangerous for you to enter it, right? So back then, they don't have drones. Right now, probably drones will make a better option to explore that. But back then, we can actually send a few robots in, and the robots will actually map everything, means they will measure using laser system, and then the data that they collected will be plotted on the software, and we will draw basically the internal of the building in 3D. But we have students that have more stories to share. We have students that have done internship at BMW, at Mercedes. We have students that even work at rocket companies, that actually launch a rocket. So I would say there are many interesting opportunities apart from your studies, opportunities to even have some experience working at these companies that are popular and well known around the world. And of course, there are also opportunities to travel around Europe, but I think that will be a topic for another day.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting and so exciting to realize that before you even enter workforce, you already have collected all of these exciting experiences leading up to you entering into the workforce. And I think that's something that I wouldn't say only Germany has to offer, but it's really a big thing and a exciting thing about Germany. Okay, let's talk about safety. We know a lot of parents out there. One of your top questions, is Germany really doable? Is Germany really safe for my child? It's in Europe after all. We hear about pickpocketing, and we want to know that it is a safe place where we're sending our children to. So yes, let's talk about safety. Is it safe to go on train rides? Is it safe to walk on the streets? We all know the do's and don'ts. We try not to hang out late at night outside, but it's different. In Malaysia, you get to hang out at the mama. But in Germany, is that safe?
I would think, from my experience, right, Germany felt very safe to me. I hang out with my friends sometimes until very late, especially in summer, because the sun sets quite late in summer, right? So we could be even walking back to our hostel at midnight, and we never encounter anything that makes us feel unsafe. So while that was my experience, it was amazing. I felt safe throughout my 5 years there. I would say that students do need to be prudent. Right? So what it means by that, I would say that, for example, don't take shortcuts through very small back alleys that is dark and not well lit, because you might not know who or what is there, right? Also, if you are traveling alone, maybe it's not best to take the last train, because what if, for example, something happens and you cannot make it to the train, right? So basically just really be prudent. If you're alone, try not to take the last train. It's best to go in groups, for example. If you know an area that might not be so safe, then don't go to the area. But I would say many areas you will feel very safe. Fingers crossed, nothing bad happens to you. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound very convincing, but I would say really it was great for me. I don't hear many bad incidents happening to other Malaysian students as well. There might be some case of racism, but quite minor. So what I mean by quite minor is probably, a group of kids, just calling you names. Just ignore them and walk away. Apart from that, I don't have any bad experience.
I think at the end of the day, you just have to be very vigilant. I think being vigilant it doesn't just mean like you are in Germany, you've got to be vigilant. Anywhere you go in the world, it's just important to be vigilant, especially if you're traveling by yourself. So yes, okay, that's on safety. Yeah. Let's talk about pickpocketing in Europe. Does it happen also in Germany?
Unfortunately, pickpocketing happens in Germany. As much as we do not want that to happen, please really take care of your belongings. Don't fall asleep and leaving your bag next to you. Keep all the important stuff close to you. Really, if you're vigilant, or rather, I think you need to be vigilant regardless of where you are. Whether you are in Germany, whether you are in Australia, whether you are studying in Malaysia.
You can even be playing arm wrestling with your friends and, get injured, and that is also not safe. So, I mean, safety doesn't just mean pickpocketing and someone stalking you and stuff. It could sometimes be also, you yourself being responsible for your own safety. Yeah? Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's talk about people who have done some of their research, for parents and students who have done some of their research. Sometimes they read a lot about sharings from others, how hard it is to graduate from university. And at times, it's specific universities. At times, they may generalize that studying in Germany equates to, it's hard to graduate from there, and therefore everything will be delayed. As it is learning the language, I will be pushed back. I'll be entering uni later than my friends. And then if uni is going to be hard and I'm going to be delayed with graduation, I would enter workforce much later as well. So by the time I'm done with this entire phase of my life, compared to others, we are always comparing with other people, I'm already in my late 20s, for example. Yeah. Did that happen to you? And would you say that's like concerning, very concerning?
I won't say late 20s. You probably graduate maybe a year or two slightly later than your peers, right? The biggest difference is, for example, they don't need to learn a new language. So that is one. You might need a little bit more time to finish your studies in Germany. That is actually very normal. Let's think of it this way. Universities in Germany, at least the universities that our students go to, are all public universities. And universities in Germany have very high standards. What that means is that the universities are not going to pass you just so they can have great, clean record, They have standards, and they have very high standards, and you will need to put in effort so that you can pass the exam. But it's also not so scary. It's not like you fail the exam one time and you'll be expelled from your university. That's not the case, right? I would say if you struggle with your studies, you need to acknowledge that and you need to get help. For example, the professors, they have what is called a Sprechstunde, which just means there's a time slot that's set aside every week so that students can find them and can clarify things that they do not understand. Or if you have problems, you can also talk to them. Now, if you feel intimidated by your professor, talk to your friends. Make friends. There's another skill, right? How to make friends with German students. They are also what is called the international office at the university. And the international office takes care of all international students studying there, right? And although you're not going directly to your professor, you can also tell them, I have problems at this lecture. And then maybe there can be the intermediary person to try to get help for you, right? So I will say, don't wait until the exam to acknowledge that you are struggling. When you are struggling, there are a lot of opportunities for you to get help. So get help early. And also, when you fail one time, it's not like the end of the world. You won't be expelled directly. You have chance to resit. If you fail the second time, you have chance to resit the third time. But of course, you do not want to resit too many times, because sometimes when you resit for a paper, it could also mean that you have to postpone other papers, right? So basically, you'll be graduating slightly later. There are also other ways that make it a little bit more safe and to really increase the chance of graduating, but That's a secret. So if you want to know more, you have to come and speak to us.
I want to think that this whole delay with graduating from a uni, there are many factors to it, and it doesn't necessarily mean just uni being hard, subjects being hard, exams being hard. I think there's also other factors like maybe joining university number one and then realizing that the course that you are pursuing is not exactly your true calling, and as you talk to people, as you make new friends, as you make more friends, you then realize that, oh, maybe university number two offers a different course that would suit, my preference and my interests and my strengths. And then therefore, with that switch, of course, with transferring credits and such, that really depends too. And would that affect your graduation timeline? Would that affect your entire study timeline? Perhaps, maybe. So I would think that there are several contributing factors to your whole study timeline, graduation timeline, and not necessarily the uni. So switching courses, switching unis, that could also affect.
That could happen, and if you think about it, that is another advantage of choosing Germany, because you get to be really sure with what you end up graduating with, right? Because there's this chance, and there's no penalty in terms of like money that you pay. For example, if you enroll to one university in Malaysia, a private one, and if you choose to study at another university, you might need to pay additional fee, or rather because you need to burn whatever you paid to the first university. But that's not the case, it's tuition free. So the lower semesters, it could also mean that the core subjects are similar, and you don't need to repeat the first or the second semester, so you don't lose time as well. I can't guarantee that. It really depends on what you choose to study, but those options are available.
You know how they say, instead of always saying that, oh, it takes too much time, how about looking at it as it allows you more time to figure things out, to figure out that, oh, this is what I really want and this is what I can do. And Germany is a place that actually provides you with that kind of opportunity, isn't it? So it really depends on how you look at it. And I think being time sensitive towards your studies and towards these kind of opportunities that you can get, you want to choose to be time sensitive in the right places, because this entire experience is so valuable at the end of the day that a lot of other places may not necessarily offer that kind of experience. Yeah, so being time sensitive and comparing your timeline with other people, I would say think about that a little more. Okay? All right, so let's talk about English taught courses. So we know that you might be concerned about learning the language and must I learn German? Are there only German taught courses that I can enroll in? And oh, I heard that there are more English taught courses for computer sciences maybe. Is that true? Is that a misconception?
A good news is that Germany is becoming more and more international, and many universities are starting to offer courses which are fully taught in English, or maybe they're offering courses that the first few semesters are taught in English, and then the next or the last few semesters before you graduate are fully taught in German. So that whole combination is there. I would say that helps to allow people to want to choose Germany because it's not so frightening, it's not so scary that you need to like overcome the language first. So the transition is there. So yes, more opportunities, that could be a good thing. Less effort to get there. But I might be biased, but as someone who have lived there, even if you choose to study in English, I strongly believe that you need to be very fluent in German so that you have better opportunities to working. So it's not to say that I've graduated in English, I cannot get a job. That's not true. You can graduate in English, you can still get a job in Germany, even if you don't know German, right? But what I'm saying is, if you are good in German, if you're fluent, you get a lot more options.
And I noticed at German Educare especially, we have always put a very strong emphasis in the importance of learning German language. However, over time, especially in recent times, we have become more encouraging for people to also explore English taught courses, mainly because we want them to see the benefits beyond what medium of instruction is your course taught in. That is one aspect really. If we recall internship opportunities, the entire living experience and studying experience, the work opportunities, all there, the medium of instruction would really be like a very minimal, small factor right there, right? So I think with medium of instruction, be open to learning the language is going to be very helpful, especially when you don't know where you're going to end up in Germany, in terms of work, in terms of, socializing with people. And I think learning the language is just going to be very advantageous, right?
Well, it is, but at the end of the day, I think the decision to choose to study in Germany is not an easy one. But that is also why we are here to help you. And if you are more open when you come to consult with us, you say, I really worry about learning German, I have big concerns about that, or can I really just choose to study English? Our student advisors will guide you through it. We have programs that prepare students for English taught courses. We have programs that prepare students for German taught courses. So we have all sorts of preparation programs. Really depends on what suits you better. You know the different options that are available. It is better for us to walk through options before you make your final decision on what to study.
Yeah, so just because we said that learning the language is important and it is advantageous, it doesn't mean that, we frown upon those who don't wish to learn up until the advanced level. Not at all. At the end of the day, how we do things here is really based on your interest, based on what you tell us. And of course, if you are clueless, that's okay too, because as we chat further, we always are able to point you in that direction where you don't end up feeling like, I'm struggling, I'm suffering. Of course, work on everybody's part is important. But yeah, so I think that would be it for our session today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, John?
I think nothing much to add, but I still want to encourage students to be open to learning German because the opportunities are really so much more. And eventually, even if you do not want to stay on in Germany, being fluent in German will give you an advantage if you want to work at other countries. I have friends that work in Taiwan, in China, in the Middle East, or any other country around the world. And if you think about how German companies have branches in those countries, and if you are fluent in English, Mandarin, in German, you will stand out so much more compared to other candidates. And in those countries where they are expanding, you have a lot more chance to grow with them. And I've seen how my friends grow and how they are, in middle management even, there are so much opportunities out there. So this is really personal. I do encourage students to choose to learn German.
Actually, as much as I would like to wrap that up, I just feel like there's so much more about Germany that we want to cover, so maybe in the next session. That's all, the end. Bye. See ya.